Hey everybody, it's GauntletX and welcome back to more Magic Arena. Today we have my first Arena Cube draft of the June 2021 Cube. Arena Cube draft, for those who don't know, is the draft format, drafting from a curated list of cards, the most powerful cards on Arena as a whole. Because of that, the event is Phantom. You don't get to keep the cards that you draft. It is simply a draft format for the fun of the format and, of course, the rewards on the tracker. So, not a great draft format for building up your collection, but a really fun draft format if you just like powerful plays, like a variety of limited events. It's great for that kind of stuff. So this time around with the June Cube, we have several new cards coming into the Cube we didn't have last time around because since the last Cube we have had the launch of Strixhaven, the Mystical Archives, and Historic Anthologies number 5. So we have like Demonic Tutors now in the Cube, Lightning Bolts in the Cube, Brainstorm, the new Liliana, a bunch of new spicy cards, Elesh Norn from the Historic Anthologies. Plenty of new powerful cards to spice things up, as well as some changes from the last cube where they cut some of the weaker cards and threw in some more powerful cards, even out of the ones that were already on Arena by the time the last cube was around. So a little bit of a shake-up there. I will have a link in the description below to the article with all of the changes to the cube. But with that whole intro out of the way, let's just hop into our first draft here and see how it all goes. I'm certainly very excited. The Arena Cube drafts will be around for about 2 weeks, I believe, and you can play them in best of 1 or best of 3 games. I prefer best of 1. It allows me to see the largest amount of variety in the decks that I play against, so that is always my most fun format, in my opinion, although there's definitely traditional for players that are interested in that. So here in our first pack, we definitely have several cards here that are brand new to the cube this time around. We're not there last time. We have Lightning Bolt. We have Lightning Helix. That might actually be it. It might just be 2 new cube cards, but there's some very good cards. Lightning Bolt is just the best burn spell of all time. Just very efficient for its cost. 1 mana, 3 damage to any target, instant speed. Fantastic card. This is going to be great in any red deck whatsoever. If you're like blue-red spells that's more controlling, it's going to be just great cheap removal. If you're mono red burn or any aggressive deck like red-green or red-black, you can just shoot it at their face or use it as cheap removal. Just a really, really good card there. So I might want to pick up the Lightning Bolt just because it's the new hotness. Don't know if it's actually the strongest card in this pack in terms of cube power level, but it's certainly a very good card, and yeah, it's kind of calling to me here. It's also very beautiful artwork. Although Lightning Helix also brand new, that is a multicolored card, so it is going to tie us to 2 color pairs if we want to be able to play that. Lightning Bolt's going to be really, really easy to even just like have a slight red splash and end up running it in our deck, so that's nice. Settle the Wreckage is obviously a super powerful card, as are most of the cards in the pack in Arena Cube, so as always with the first couple picks, I would tend to just lean a little bit towards whatever strategies you're the most confident with or that you're going to have the most fun with, because you can't go incredibly wrong early on in the picks. But once you start seeing what colors tend to be more open, that's when you can start trying to jump in on that certain game plan. But you can definitely kind of weigh your picks towards the sort of strategies that you like, that you're good at the start. So definitely several cards that you could take out of that first pack that you really can't go wrong with. So, for a somewhat similar reason to the Lightning Bolt here, I'm kind of interested in trying out the Sedgemoor Witch. A new card from Strixhaven, so we haven't played it in the cube before. 3 mana for a 3/2, Menace, and it's hard to target. They have to pay 3 life to do so because of that ward ability. And whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you create a 1/1 black pest. So black-red in the cube tends to be black-red sacrifice, so getting a bunch of little tokens is going to be good, those pest tokens there. And it does combo well with Lightning Bolt being a 1 mana instant, so a nice cheap way to trigger Magecraft. Yeah, I'm kind of interested in trying out the Sedgemoor Witch. Again, this is a pick mainly towards trying some of the new stuff in the cube. There are certainly plenty viable options, as always in the first few picks. So, Salumgar's Command, they have all of the commands from the latest Historic Anthology in here, and most of those are going to be really good in the cube. I expect. They are all, however, multicolored, so a little hard to take super early, but maybe we could choose some kind of Grixis control deck here. 5 mana to counter a non-creature spell, or return a permanent to its owner's hand, or give something -2/-3, or destroy a planeswalker, and you choose 2 of those things. So being able to like counter a non-creature spell and give something -3/-3, maybe get a nice spicy 2-for-1 there. Could be really good in like a Grixis control deck, so maybe we could roll with that and try to head in that direction. There's also Skewer the Critics if we want to go for an aggressive Rakdos deck here. Sedgemoor, Witch, Lightning Bolt, and Skewer the Critics would all go fantastically in a deck together, so that's a fine pick. Same with Dread Wanderer or just the black-red dual land. Lots of great stuff here to choose from as always. Slumgar's Command would be the boldest option for sure, but it's also the new hotness, and let's stick to that theme, I think. Let's see if maybe we get to do blue, black, red, some form of control here. Also in Nico Bolas's colors, my favorite character, so that would be pretty cool if we can end up there. This pack looks like we're going to get a little bit punished for that because the best cards out of here are just aggressive red cards, Captain Lannery Storm and Lightning Strike. As far as cards that'll go with what we're drafting so far. So just taking one of those good Rakdos cards, I think we'd have a really good start to just aggressive Rakdos, but Lightning Strike is efficient enough removal to where this has been a fantastic card in the cube as long as it's been in there, and it's literally just a twice as expensive Lightning Bolt. So if you ever want to know how good Lightning Bolt is, if you've never played it before, just think on the fact that Lightning Strike is actually just heavily played and pretty good in cube, and it's strictly like twice as bad, it costs twice as much mana. So yeah, that's a thing. But yeah, Lightning Strike, again, it's going to be great in those aggressive decks. It's going to be great in controlling decks as a removal spell. Seems like a super safe pick here, and I'm super fine with it. There's also a Tarka's Command, another one of those really powerful commands, and then we're going to be in 4 colors right now. Really kind of flopping around all over the place at the start of this draft. So I do like both of these double red cards here quite a bit. There's Siege Gang Commando, 5 mana for a 2/2 goblin that creates 3/1/1 goblins when it enters the battlefield, and it allows you to sacrifice those goblins as cannon fodder, dealing 2 damage to any target every time. So very, very strong ability. A bit of a slower card though. And then there's an Axe Hardened in the Forge, which is fantastic. 3 mana for a 2/3. Its power is equal to your devotion to red, so even if you have nothing else on board, it's a 2/3. And whenever one of your creatures dies, you get a 1/1 red satyr, or if the creature that died had power 4 or greater, you get 2 of those instead. So really good in aggressive red decks, really good in red-black sacrifice, because it does give you all of those tokens to sacrifice. I think I'm going to roll with an Axe here. Maybe we are just headed right into Rakdos aggro, or Rakdos sacrifice. And with a Mayhem Devil here, I think that's a pretty safe place to be. Mayhem Devil, of course, being one of the signpost cards for going towards that strategy, being a 3/3 for 3 that whenever you're sacrificing a permanent, you're dealing 1 to any target. It even triggers off of your opponent sacrificing cards, which isn't going to happen incredibly often, but you might be able to draft a few cards that make your opponent sacrifice things like the Priest of the Forgotten Gods or something like that from Ravnica. That's the 2 mana 1/2 priest. If you tap it, sacrifice 2 things, you make your opponent sacrifice a creature as well. So it does trigger with cards like that as well. So I'm going to take Mayhem Devil here. It's that or the black-red duel, I think, because Sweltering Suns is not the kind of card you want to play in a more aggressive deck. Although this is an option. The only card we have that is strictly aggressive, I would say, is an Axe. We could take Sweltering Suns for that potential Grixis control, that blue-black-red control build, but it's looking like aggressive red cards are coming to us quite often here, so Rakdos aggro should be wide open so far. Pick 7 here, we see Dragonkin Berserker, Birgi, God of Storytelling, Emberth Shieldbreaker even, some great aggressive options. I do like the Dragonkin Berserker a lot. If this ever gets to boast, it's just incredible. 2 mana for a 2/2 first strike, and maybe even spits out a 5/5 dragon for you, which is exceptional. The God of Storytelling is good as well. 3 mana for a 3/3 that allows you to start dumping out your hand really quickly because you're getting 1 red mana back every time you cast something. And late game, it's just the Horn of Bounty. It's just a decent draw spell. I think these are both really good. I don't know which is better, but I'm going to roll with the Dragonkin Berserker here. And Ember Shieldbreaker, that's a red card I'd still like to take decently highly, because while it doesn't look very impressive just being a 2 mana 2/1, the fact that you can just play it as main deckable artifact hate is really good, because of course the adventure on it is 1 red mana to blow up an artifact. So again, another pack with a bunch of really strong red cards. I think I'm going to roll with Glorybringer here, but there's a pretty good argument for Phoenix of Ash. Don't think there's a fantastic argument for Chandra here, because we're seeing so many really good aggressive red cards coming by that I think we can draft a very aggressive deck with a low curve, and Chandra's not great in those. Chandra's really good in controlling decks or rampy decks that are doing big things. Not super great here, but Phoenix of Ash and Glorybringer would both be great. Glorybringer's like hedging our bets a little bit. This is going to be great if we're hyper aggressive. It's going to be great if we're mid-range. It's going to be great if we're controlling, whereas Phoenix of Ash might be moderately better if we're hyper aggressive, but a lot worse if we're any of those other two things. So Glorybringer, of course, this is the top end of your curve if you're super aggro, or it's just another mid-range card if you're mid-range, or just a good removal spell if you're like really controlling. So fills a lot of roles there. And here there's only one card in our colors, so I think we'll take Mire Triton. Not super excited about it, but there are some black cards that'll come back from your graveyard that do work well in Rakdos strategies. So I'm going to take that over like the blue-red dual land. Well, we could take the blue-red dual land, again hedging our bets towards maybe moving back into the blue-black-red kind of build, but I think there's a decent enough chance that we'll find something that works with Mire Triton to where this might actually get played as well. I think it's just about as likely as ending up playing that blue-red dual land. And this pack's not good for us, I think. I mean, Seasoned Hallowblade's the closest to what we might do if we end up in like red-white aggro. I don't like double vision in aggressive decks, and really generally not at all. 5 mana for an enchantment that doesn't do anything until you cast your next spell is kind of a hard sell. And we do see really late Skewer the Critics, as well as a pretty late Active Treason, although the only deck that wants Active Treason is Rakdos Sacrifice. We don't have anything that lets us sacrifice cards yet, so I think we actually want Skewer the Critics more than the Active Treason, unfortunately, which is a little sad, because Active Treason is usually the card you can get really late in the drafts, but the way that Cube works is that there's only one of every card, so as soon as you've seen an Active Treason go by that late, you will never see an Active Treason again, because that was the one Active Treason in the Cube. So we will not be able to Active Treason our opponent's cards and then sacrifice them, but I think we'll have a fine time still. Captain Lannery Storm's a pretty easy pick there. Nice aggressive creature that can ramp us and mana fix us, as well as having treasure tokens that work with Mayhem Devil's effect. My apologies for the audio there. Sorry, I'm just muting my phone during this. I'm actually really happy to see that Embereth Shieldbreaker last pick there, because again, main deckable artifact hate is pretty solid. So moving into the second pack here, what do we want? Dragonmaster Outcast isn't unplayable in a very aggressive deck, although it's not where it really shines. This card is much, much better in decks that have ways to consistently ramp out their lands. In aggressive decks, you often want to win before you even have 6 lands out. And you can even cut lands sometimes, so it's not the greatest combo there, but it's still like such a powerful card. Sometimes you'll still run it, that way you have just another late game card, sort of, if you do get mana flooded. Yeah, there's not much going for us aggressively. Witch of the Moors is more of a mid-range card, and it needs a lot of life gain to go with it, so not really going to be a Rakdos kind of thing, more of an Orzhov black-white sort of card, but very good in there. Evolving Wilds is interesting, it'll mana fix us, and if we have something like Mayhem Devils out, we do get to deal a damage when we crack our Evolving Wilds, which is cute. Or there's just like Heartless Act here, kind of cheap removal, get a blocker out of the way. Yeah, Stonecoil Serpent as well, not terrible. I'm just going to take a Heartless Act. Don't know how excited I am about that, but I think not particularly. And we do see some really nice, really high mana black cards here, but we're looking super nice and aggressive, so I don't think we're going to take them. Of course, Professor Onyx being another card that's the new hotness, but now that we're in pack 2, we're kind of solidified where we're going in this draft, and it's just burn. It's just tons of really aggressive red cards, so I'm right back on my nonsense. So yeah, I don't think I'm taking these high mana black cards, especially not the Languish that is just a Wrath effect, because it's not going to combo well with what we've got. So I'm going to take Royal Eruption here. I think it's the most versatile of these red cards, so it's the most likely to disappear the quickest. I'm hoping we can wheel Gitu Lava Runner, but wheeling either of the other 2 red cards is going to be super fine. I like Royal Eruption a lot because it can hit your opponent in the face, and if you top deck in the late game, you can hit him in the face for 5, which can often just end the game. So we'll take the Royal Eruption there. I do like Kazul's Fury. I do love me some modal lands. They're lands when you need them in the early game, and if you top deck them in the late game, your land actually does something that could be significant, you know, finishing off that final few damage by flinging one of your creatures at your opponent's face is definitely a thing. Bastion of Remembrance and Weaponized Monsters are both towards that sacrifice strategy, though, although so is Kazul's Fury. I mean, it says sacrifice right on the card, but both Bastion and Weaponized Monsters definitely more of the build-around kind of cards than Kazul's Fury, because Kazul's Fury's got that that versatility of just being a land. We're honestly like so red right now. I could see us ending up in mono red here, so I'm going to take one of the red cards over the Bastion, and I think Kazul's Fury is going to be the best if we don't specifically end up in Rakdos Sacrifice. Like, that'll be the best even if we're in mono red. Ooh, but we do see Kolagon's Command here, so pretty likely we're going to be in Rakdos. This card is sweet. 3 mana. At instant speed, you get to do 2 damage to any target. You can have your opponent discard a card, or you can bring a creature back from your grave, or you can destroy an artifact. So this is just, again, such a powerful, versatile card for its mana cost. This is always going to be, well, it's going to often be very good for its cost. 3 mana to, like, kill their 2 toughness creature and make them discard a card is really good disruption. Or if you draw this a little bit later in the game and you've got a good creature in your graveyard, 3 mana to do 2 to something and then bring a creature back from the grave is good. And when you're aggressive enough, sometimes that 2 damage just goes to their face. And just like with the Ember's Shieldbreaker, it's main deckable artifact hate, so I do like that Kolagon's Command. I'm going to try that thing out here. And now nothing in red, so I guess it defaults us back to Timuret Calls the Dead. But this is a pretty unexciting card for an aggressive deck. I mean, it does get you like 2 2/2s off of 1 3-mana card, but it does it pretty slowly. Kind of like a worse History of Benalia, because it also doesn't do it consistently. It's possible to not mill the right kind of card on the first 2 parts of this saga. Yeah, I really don't love this. Maybe I want Field of Ruin just to be able to blow up like Search of Viscontas for my opponent. Search of Visconta being a very powerful blue land that lets them keep drawing non-creature spells at the top 4. Really hard to beat if that land ever comes out. Yeah, I'm just going to take Field of Ruin. Don't know how likely I am to play it. I'd have to get some red-black duels if I'm going to be in black-red and wanting to play that, just because it is making my mana base worse by tapping for only colorless mana. Blood for Bones. Good for the Reanimator decks, not necessarily for the Sacrifice decks. Not really going to do much here, because any creatures we're getting back aren't going to be expensive enough to be like cheating them into play. Definitely more for the Golgari decks. Those have a lot of self-mill and reanimation in this cube. I guess I'll grab the Insult to Injury here. This can double your damage. That can sometimes win the game out of nowhere, and if it doesn't, you can always just cast Injury later as a pretty decent removal spell. Get something out of the way and hit your opponent for a couple damage. So that's really nice. Really love Light Up the Stage, although Chandra is a powerful planeswalker as well. Chandra's just a bit much mana if I'm trying to be really aggressive, and our curve here looks to be that way. Light Up the Stage is just a very powerful draw spell in aggressive decks, because you can cast this for only 1 mana to basically just draw 2 cards. You flip the top 2 cards of your library until the end of your next turn you can play them. So as long as they're cheap enough, you're going to be casting both of them, which can frequently happen in aggressive decks with a low curve, so I really like Light Up the Stage. Obosh the Prey Piercer. Do we have any even costs? We got a lot of even costs. 1, 2... Only cards with odd mana values and lands. Yeah, we're not going to get Obosh's ability off, but Obosh is still a 5 mana 3/5 that doubles all of your odd damage. So we're not going to be able to play Obosh as a companion, but even just running Obosh as Obosh, just a card in the deck, it's a 5 mana, basically 6/5 by itself, and it makes all of these do more damage, which is nice. We actually do have quite a bit of odd cards, so that might be okay. And here, just because we're not going to have anything that combos with Witch of the Moors basically at all. I mean, we have Sedgemoor Witch and Mire Triton, but we're going to have very few cards that combo with the Witch of the Moors. I am going to take that Dragon Master Outcast, although I am a little unlikely to play it. And we did wheel both of the red cards here, Gitu Lava Runner and Scorching Dragonfire. I think I'm doing really good on red burn and removal, so I'm kind of leaning towards the creature here. Let's see how we're looking. 11 creatures, 10 non-creatures. Yeah, we have Lightning Strike, Royal Eruption, a Lightning Bolt. Skewer the Critics. Lots of removal. Kolagon's Command. I don't think we need Scorching Dragonfire that much. I'm going to take the Gitu Lava Runner, which can be a 1-mana 2/2 haste if you've got the instants and sorceries engraved for it. So we'll grab some more cheap creatures there, and now we'll take a Weaponize the Monsters. And Volcanic Salvo. This is for those like big red decks, mainly like red-green kind of stuff, where you can have a lot of power in your creatures. All this does is blow up some creatures or planeswalkers. So I'm just going to take Sarkhan here.
We begin.
Sarkhan, at worst, you pay 5 mana, get a 4/4 flyer out of him. And at best, you pay 5 mana, get a 4/4 flyer, and the next turn uses +1, and all of a sudden you're attacking with 2 4/4 flyers the turn after you've played Sarkhan. So Sarkhan can be a pretty good top end to an aggressive deck as well, giving you some big evasive threats. All right, we're heading into the final pack now. Let's see what we got. We got a Torbran in this pack, adding 2 more damage to everything that you have that's red. That's really good. Inquisition of Kozilek, one of the new cards. That's really good disruption in the early game. 1 mana, your opponent reveals their hand. Choose a card that costs 3 or less from it, and they have to discard it. So you get to get rid of whatever their early game play is planning on being. We have Doomblade, another Mystical Archives card that's quite good. 2 mana instant, destroy a non-black creature. Just great removal there. I think I want to play Torbran here. I mean, we're so heavy into red. We have 20 red cards. If we take this Torbran and we get just 5 more good, like, playable red cards, we could end up in just mono red here. It's very possible, especially because Obosh is a hybrid cost, so we can play Obosh even if we're not playing black. So Torbran has really high potential if we do manage to get in on that mono red train here. Although it would be moderately, I'll give you that, it would be moderately sad not to be able to try out like the new Kolagon's Command. I think that's the coolest card we have in black-red for sure. But now we have Leyline Tyrant, another powerful mono-red card, 4 mana for a 4/4 flyer. Doubles, or it doesn't double your mana, but it makes it so you don't lose your red mana when your phases end. So you can just tap out all your lands even if you're not playing anything and just hold on to that red mana for later. And when it dies, it does however much damage you want by paying a bunch of red to any target, so even to your opponent's face. So Leyline Tyrant, really nice mono red card there. Although Tibalt would be a good Rakdos card, this isn't a good Rakdos aggro card because we'd want to play this ideally as the 7 mana version, which we're rarely going to have the mana for. But the fact that Valky's on the front means this would be good enough. I would take that if we were definitely still going to be Rakdos. But now that I have Torbran, I'm trying moderately hard to kind of pivot into just the red here. Valakut Awakening is like fine. It's a land when you need a land, and if you draw it later, it's a little bit of a draw spell, not a great one. We could also just take Mecha Godzilla. Mecha Godzilla is always a fun time. 3 mana for a 3/3, no matter what. And every combat, it just gets moderately better at random. Maybe it gets +1/+1 counter, maybe it gets menace, maybe it gets flying. Who knows? There's a bunch of abilities you can get. Yeah, Mecha Godzilla is a pretty fun card. I'll throw Mecha Godzilla in here. Because again, I'm going to be trying to take those just mono red cards. And now I'll take a shock. Although Magmatic Channeler is great here. If you have the cards for it, it's going to be a 4/4 for only 2 mana. And you can also use it to draw cards later in the game. Discard a card, exile the top 2. And you can play one of those. So that's pretty good. Don't know what's actually better between Shock and Magmatic Channeler, but I think they're both good. If we're really lucky, we have been wheeling a lot of red cards. If we're really lucky, we'll wheel whatever we didn't take back here. Yeah, I'll take the Shock, hoping to wheel the Magmatic Channeler. Banefire is fantastic. It's a way to end the game, even against control decks. Just dump all your mana into this at the end of the game, and they can't even counter it. So once your opponent's like stabilized, they've played their Wrath effect, cleared out all your creatures, they've played a bunch of draw, they've got counters in hand, but they're, you're still a faster deck, you've still dealt them damage to where they're down to like 4 life or something. Banefire can really be the nail in the coffin there and really help out, so I do like Banefire a lot. Well, Judith for Rakdos, another one of those drafts. Rakdos is wide open, but so is just mono red, and I think if you can get the mono red deck, it is fantastic, especially when you have the cards like Torbran and Anax that both incentivize you so much to be just mono red. and you have a really good time if you can get there, so we're trying to get there. And we get to play this Field of Ruin if we're mono red without really worrying about our mana. Doesn't really matter that one of our lands in our deck taps for a colorless when we only need one specific color of mana. I don't know if I want the Hellhound or the Demon Bolts. I think, again, yeah, I'm going to take the Hellhound. I feel like I've got just a million burn spells. I want to grab more creatures here, especially since I took the shock over that Magmatic Channeler. I think I'm doing great there. Earthshaker Kenner is one of my favorite aggressive cards in the game. 2 mana for a 2/1 haste, and it shuts off a blocker with power less than or equal to its power. And then you bring it back for 6 mana and do it all over again. Although Ox of Aganos is interesting as well. You can escape that card and discard your hand to draw 3 more. Can definitely refuel you in the late game. So both of those are nice, resilient cards. And Crawling Barrens is definitely playable here as well. Because we're monocolored, we're not going to be hurt by having a land that taps for colorless. And this is a land that anytime we're getting flooded out, we can just start dumping counters onto this until it becomes a massive creature. So, yeah, I think anybody who's been around on the channel for a while and has seen how I've drafted the previous Arena Cubes won't be as surprised as I am here to have ended up in mono red immediately. I definitely wasn't planning on this, but mono red really is the life sometimes. It definitely happens, and we wield the Magmatic Channeler. Mono red is wide open. And I might play a Grim Initiate, but probably not. So the cards I were passing there were more controlling, kind of wrathy effect red cards that I didn't really want. And the Lightning Axe that I threw on the side, it's just because we don't want to 2-for-1 ourselves to get a removal spell when we have so many burn spells anyway. We don't need the Lightning Axe here. Faithless Looting, I set it immediately in the side because that's more for decks with a lot of graveyard synergies. If you don't have graveyard synergies, Faithless Looting puts you down a card, basically. You spend 1 card to draw 2 and discard 2, so you're essentially discarding 3 to draw 2 because you're discarding Faithless Looting as well, so you're not up a card at all. So unless you have good like flashback effects or cards that care about what's in your grave, I wouldn't really run the Faithless Looting. Or if you're just like a slower deck that has a lot of good use of just being able to flashback this later. But we're definitely not that kind of deck. Yeah, I think I'm fine with all of the red cards I've got in the sideboard, and I think I'm fine just cutting the black out of here, hopping into mono red. Let's go ahead and build this deck. Probably going to end up cutting some lands here, going for as aggressive a strategy as we can, and seeing how well this does. Gotta test out, it's a new cube, you gotta test out how good mono red is every time. And it's always good, but gotta see exactly how good. Alright, so Skewer the Critics, that's a 1 mana card the vast majority of the time because of Spectacle. Light up the stage as well. Kazul's Fury can be a land, so we'll throw it over there. Yeah, I mean, this is pretty much the ideal aggressive curve. Maybe even cut a 5 mana card here. Insult to Injury is a little bit sketchy. I mean, there's always going to be the dream draws where Insult all of a sudden does 1,000,000 damage to your opponent, but oftentimes Insult does very little, and then Injury is not that great, especially if you had to cast Insult first to get there. I don't know, let's see what we're looking like here. We have 17 creatures, 11 non-creatures. Our average cost is 2.5. I think we definitely can cut some lands here. So we've got so many 1-mana cards. Let's sort our creatures out here so we can see how the creature curve looks. Actually do have a lot of even costs, so Obosh is looking a little weaker than Obosh looked when we first drafted them. Because it's not going to help all these 2-mana cards, not going to help these 4-mana cards. I could see cutting the Obosh here. It's also one of our more expensive cards, so that puts us down to only 2 5-mana cards here, which I do like. I think the biggest thing that this deck is missing is that late game kind of card draw that can really get you back into the game if your opponent has stabilized. That is, I think, the biggest thing I'm worried about here is that we just run out of gas in the late game if our cards didn't stack up well together, like if we just didn't get quite aggressive enough. So that is where cards like Oh, I forget what it's called. Experimental Frenzy. That's where picking up like an Experimental Frenzy could really come into play well. Experimental Frenzy is like my favorite card to have at 4 or 5 mana in these red decks, because that card allows you to play cards off the top of your library. So now all of a sudden, if you were about to get mana flooded, at least you can just start playing the lands off the top, get through them a little bit faster. And really the best thing it does is, if you're in a mono red deck like this and your opponent stabilizes, if all of a sudden you're in the late game and you're still drawing your 1 mana cards, you're just not going to win that game, because they're going to be able to have cards that can compete with you casting just a Scorch Spitter and then casting just a Grim Initiate the next turn, you know? But if you have Experimental Frenzy out, you could just play the cards off the top. You just get to go Scorch Spitter, Grim Initiate, and then you hit a land, so like play the land, and then you hit like Mecha Godzilla, play Mecha Godzilla, and then you hit your next land, then you stop. You know, you can play like 2-3 cards a turn quite often with Experimental Frenzy, so one of the best cards for getting out of those positions. But here, I think if our opponent stabilizes, our best option to top deck is just like Banefire. Glorybringer is pretty good too. I mean, a big evasive haster can often chip away that final bit of damage. So I'm definitely not going to cut Banefire, definitely not going to cut Glorybringer. Got to make 4 cuts here. I might cut the Insult. I mean, I don't know. Magical Christmas Land, we play Scorch Spitter turn 1, Pyromancer turn 2, and then we just Insult if they haven't played any creatures in the early game. Then all of a sudden Scorch Spitter does 4 damage and Pyromancer does 4 damage, so we're just like, bam, hit you for 8, and then we've got Injury in the grave. Like, there's positions where Insult's great, but it just feels a little situational to me, I don't know. Crash Through doesn't do much, but the fact that it just draws a card the second you play it means that it just replaces itself immediately. So, you know, it's just like cycling through your deck a little bit. So, it doesn't really need to do much. We essentially just play a 39 card deck. Crash Through's just a little cycler there. Works with Gitu Lava Runner and Magmatic Channeler. So it helps both of those hit the amount of instants and sorceries they want in our grave. Yeah, I'm fine with the Crash Through. I think there's just a very low cost to running this card. Although, the more aggressive you are, the cheaper your stuff is, the more often you're using every last bit of mana every turn, so there actually is a little bit of a cost to having to take 1 mana off to do this at some point. But I think it's probably worth it with both Lava Runner and Channeler. I think we're taking Dragon Master Outcast out. I think that's the first card that looks like just definitely not what we're doing. Theoretically, it is one of those cards that can get us there if we end up in that situation where our opponent stabilizes, but we have to imagine that if they've gotten to that position where they stabilize, they can probably just deal with a 1-1. Like, any removal in the universe can kill a 1-1. I don't know. I think I'm going to cut that. 3 more cards to cut. I could see just cutting 3 lands here that go to 14 lands in this deck. Might be a little bit aggressive. Curve is 2.5. Definitely cut 2 lands here, go to 15 lands. But again, because the biggest fear I have is running out of gas, we could just cut more lands. Like, if we're stuck on 1 or 2 mana, I feel like we win more games where we're stuck on 1 or 2 mana than games where we draw like 6 or 7 lands. At least drawing those lands really quickly. And we have the Kazul's Fury as well. So this is still 16 lands when we really need that Kazul's Fury. Or this would still be 15 lands if we cut a mountain here. Could see cutting Sarkhan. If I am getting to the point where I'm cutting these lands, just keep that curve lower still. Because I think Glorybringer is definitely better than Sarkhan. But Sarkhan's still, you know, good flying dragons. Yeah, I don't know how aggressive I want to go with this mana base here. I think I'll start like this, but if I end up really getting stuck on mana quite often, then I might cut the Sarkhan and throw another land in and see how things go from there. But this is how we're going to start. Let's get those classic Hour of Devastation Full Art Mountains back in here. Run it back just like the last time I drafted the cube quite often, so I will definitely make sure to draft decks that are not mono red. I promise I won't do it every time, but I'm actually really happy to have ended up in mono red in the pod that I was in this draft. I think it was wide open, so I'm super fine with it to start the format. Started off drafting a bunch of the new cards to try them out. Ended up with mainly a bunch of stuff that was already in the queue, but we do have Lightning Bolt. That pick one, pack one Lightning Bolt. We went for it. This deck loves it, a Lightning Bolt. I am definitely keeping this hand. This is spectacular. We get to cycle that Crash through immediately. That'll help us get the 4th mana for Torbran faster. And we have a great curve of Earthshaker Kenra hasting out, smacking them into Mechagodzilla. Who knows what'll happen with Mechagodzilla. And if we do hit that 4th land, we get to play Torbran turn 4. And if we don't, we can just drop a Kazul's Cliffs. And we'll know that we'll have Torbran mana eventually. So really nice hand here. Our opponent looks to be on blue-black. Demir from our opponent. Baral, Chief of Compliance. A little scared to see that start from our opponent. The 1/3 that makes their instants and sorceries cost 1 less and allows them to draw a card and discard a card every time they cast a counterspell. So we're definitely against like a blue-black controlling build here. We actually have a bit of a decision here. If I play Kazul's Cliffs, I know I get to play Torbran next turn, but then I'm casting nothing this turn. I think I would rather just keep curving out and play the Mechagodzilla here, because I actually think that our 5-drops are going to be better than Torbran in this matchup, especially because we just don't have a lot of cheap red creatures in the hand right now. We just have that one Earthshaker Kenra that'll be dealing more damage with Torbran. I think Sarkhan and Glorybringer are both cards we would really like to get out, especially if we can cast them under their counter spells, just before they're holding up the mana for them. So Feed the Swarm here to kill the Mechagodzilla will make them take 3 damage. They do have to take damage equal to its mana value. So at least it's still got some damage out of the way there. But we do have to say goodbye to Mechagodzilla before it got hexproof. We do grab the mountain here. Now we have the decision between playing Kazul's Cliffs and knowing we get to just drop Glorybringer next turn, or just dropping down Torbran. If we drop down Torbran, we don't even know if we get to play something next turn, but then we definitely don't play something this turn. If we drop Torbran, we do get to attack with Earthshaker Kenra, but then we just trade with Dusk Legion Zealot, which isn't great. Although Earthshaker Kenra being in the grave is good for the Eternalize effect. I think I want to make sure that I can cast these powerful dragons. I think they're going to be pretty big cards coming up here. And I don't love attacking him with the Kenra, even if we get Torbran on this board to where Kenra is essentially a 4/1. We just trade into the Dusk Legion Zealot. Kenra goes into the grave and sits around waiting for us to have 6 mana. And if we want Earthshaker Kenra in the grave, we can just send it in the grave whenever we want, basically, by sending an attack, even if we don't have Torbran out. Or we could just block here. I don't think I'm at that point yet. Especially because every point of damage they do to me doesn't really matter right now. When you're like a mono red deck against a more controlling deck, your life total doesn't really matter at all. Unless you're against an aggressive deck. What matters much more is whether your opponent can stabilize and keep their life total high enough to where they just have more cards than you near the end of the game. Just enough answers to the amount of threats that you spit out early on. So, really not particularly worried about them chipping at me for 1 damage. To the point where I'd want to sacrifice the Kenra. So we do draw Light Up the Stage, which is going to be fantastic. Do I want to play Glorybringer first or Sarkhan first? I think I'd rather play Sarkhan first. Sarkhan kind of shuts off all their attacks. Whenever they attack me, if I control a dragon, it deals 1 damage to their attacking creature. So if I control 1 damage, if they attack with either of these 1 toughness creatures, they just die on the spot. So Sarkhan's actually pretty safe here. And Sarkhan's going to be a bigger impact than Glorybringer if Sarkhan resolves. Although they do have the memory lapse to put Sarkhan back on top of our library. Yeah, I was going to say with just 1 mana up, they could cast 2 mana counterspells. Not a ton of counters they could have there. So not insanely worried about the counter. But they do have the memory lapse, so unfortunate there. Doesn't matter which one we play there then, since we're just going to redraw whichever one we cast. Either card we play is going to get memory lapsed, and the turn ends the same way. So if we're trying to play around the memory lapse, there's really no like best play against the memory lapse, I think. Unless we really want to just go for like a light up the stage and hard read that they have it. Okay. Uh-oh. Hollowed Fountain from our opponents. They do have the white mana, so white, blue, black control. The full Esper control here. Don't love that. They're stabilizing a bit more now to where I'm mildly worried about my life total, but I think, again, not enough to trade with. Definitely not enough to trade with Champion of Wits. If I trade with Champion of Wits, they have a powerful Eternalized card in their grave, but maybe trade for Zealot here. Probably just attack in, to be fair, because now they don't have a great blocker for Earthshaker Kenra. If they want to block Earthshaker Kenra, they have to lose a 2-1 Death Touch, which is actually mildly considerate. That's not what I meant to say. Mildly important. I'm a little bit more interested in playing Glorybringer now because I'm mildly worried about their aggression. But at worst, they do 4, 5, 6 damage to me and I go down to 9. No, we're still really safe. And they're tapped out, so we know we get to get that 1 dragon token. If they do have the removal spell for the dragon token, then they can still attack with that stuff. But if they don't, it blows it all up. But they had Pact of Negation here, the 0 mana counterspell. So things are not looking great here. Your opponent has the Baral counterspells deck. And yeah, can't really play around the 0 mana counterspell. So now I don't think I can attack anymore then. I think I have to actually try to trade for their Mire Triton, hoping that they just attack all here. At least they have to skip their turn here. They have to spend all that mana for the Pact of Negation now. Yeah, we'll trade with that Mire Triton for sure. Take forward down to 11. Now we are definitely pivoting into the mid-range deck here and just trying to control what they have going on. Now we Glorybringer, kill Baral. We start taking 3 damage a turn, which is not that threatening. We get to put a 2/4 on this board. That can block their stuff all game. Yeah, take 3 damage a turn. We're like 4 turns from dying to that. Scarab God, we're much faster going to die to that card. This card is absurd. It's a 5/5. If we kill it in any way, it just goes back to their hand. And for 4 mana, they just get to create a 4/4 of anything in a grave. Scarab God definitely changes things for the far worse here. We have 5 mana, so we could play Torbran. But that's it. If we cast Torbran, that's all we get to do. And if we just cast a Torbran, they attack with everybody. We have to chump block the Scarab God, pretty much. Take 3, go to 5. They bring back just a 4/4 Baral or a 4/4 Mire Triton that gains life. I think Scarab God means this is just over. I think we're just hoping for something insane off Light Up the Stage, because Torbran is not going to get us out of this one. Torbran is just a single trump block, so Magmatic Channeler is just as good of a play as Torbran. So may as well play that there. Well, we do get a Nax. A Nax is actually a way better blocker than Torbran, but unfortunately still not good enough to block Scarab God without dying. But at the very least, with a Nax, we do get tokens out of it when it dies. So the Scarab God... Oh, they just have the bounce spell for the exact 8 lethal. Alright. I think the Light Up the Stage was the best play we had there. We could have also played Shieldbreaker plus Channeler, which technically we would have lived if we did that, because we would have played 2 creatures. They can only bounce one of them. But that's entirely reliant on just chump blocks to survive through the turn. So they bounce 1, we chump block, take 3. I think if we had played both of these, though, they just wouldn't bounce and probably wouldn't attack. They'd just make a 4/4, gain 2 life or something. So yeah, that would have let us get through to another turn, but their board with a Scarab God on it is very, very likely to just keep getting bigger and better. So we had a pretty good time as far as our mana went that game. I think that seemed super fine. I mean, we made it to the 5 mana we needed. We even drew several of our 5 mana cards and had that 5 mana, so everything worked out there. So I think I'm still going to keep the mana base as is, and this hand looks great. Nice cheap curve here. Drop that Scorch Spitter immediately, and then Earthshaker counter, Lannery Storm. Like, these 3 cards together, this looks like an actual hand you would have in Standard sometimes. Although I don't remember if these 3 were in Standard together. I have played Mono Red off and on as basically my go-to deck in Standard on Arena for as long as Arena's existed. Just because it's the easiest one, it's always basically the same game plan. So I just very rarely play Standard, so when I do, let me just grab that nice simple deck that I know how it functions. So every card in my hand is a card I've cast many times in Standard. Just makes me feel right at home. So we're playing against Boros or Lorehold, red-white, either way around. Same difference. Bone Crusher Giant here, one of the better cards in the cube. Just great to be able to have a removal spell and a creature all off that one card. Very, very nice. I think we're going to roll with the Captain Lannery Storm. This allows us to curve into Sarkhan next turn, which is fantastic. Get it out nice and quickly. They're even down to 12 already, so we just have a great start to this game. If they just slam down the Bone Crusher Giant this turn, we're living the dream. Ooh, interesting. This means they definitely have something. For 3 mana in red and white, would it be a Mana Tithe? There's no way that they would just hold up a Mana Tithe instead of playing the 4/3 blocker here. So I don't think that they have like a Mana Tithe to counter something unless we pay 1. So I think we still go for Sarkhan over Leyline Tyrant. Although Leyline Tyrant is almost as good as Sarkhan, and it plays around Mana Tithe, so I think that's a fine play. We just go to combat, see if they tap out for any removal here, and then we just like know that Sarkhan's safe post-combat. Sarkhan is enough better than Leyline Tyrant that I think we should just go to combat here and see what happens. But if they don't do anything here, this will be a little weird. Oof, Sigrid God-favored. Flash in a First Striker here. Exiles one of our cards and First Strikes away the other, so that is a big way to stabilize here. Gonna just clear our board. The massive 2-for-1. Unfortunately, none of our burn in hand to kill that. And I guess the one thing that I didn't realize when I was considering Sarkhan is if we just attack with Lannery first, we also have an extra treasure token. So we're also playing around a Mana Tithe this way because we have the extra treasure to do so. Except now do I want to play around removal? If I play a Sarkhan and -3 Sarkhan, if they kill the dragon, they get to kill Sarkhan. So if they just have a removal spell that can kill a 4 toughness creature, Sarkhan's a goner. But if I just play Leyline Tyrant and they play something to kill this, I could sacrifice my treasure to deal 2 damage to any target, so I can kill Sigrid if they kill this. Although that only triggers when it dies, and in a white deck I would expect exile-based removal. Pretty close either way here. I'm going to go with the Sarkhan here. Hope for the best. I just feel like if they have removal here, I think it's probably just like a white removal spell like Banish Lightning or whatever. It's something about banishment. Banishing light, that's what it is. And if they have a red removal spell that does 4 damage, it could be like Lava Coil, which also exiles. So anything that exiles, we don't get to use Leyline Tyrant's effect anyway. Just all the removal I'm thinking of is just exile removal. Ideally, there's no removal. And Sarkhan just does the thing. Working out so far. If they attack with that Beaumont Courier, it dies before I even block, which is very cool. Alright, nothing, so I'm guessing the pass of the turn here. Awesome. And the reason I didn't play Get to Lava Runner there was for this exact situation. If I draw land, I now have enough mana to play Earthshaker Kenra, where I wouldn't if I sacked this treasure. So I'd rather be able to have that mana to potentially drop an Earthshaker Kenra than just have a 1-2 on this board. A 1-2 is pretty insignificant. So yeah, now we have a really good turn where we make Sarkhan a 4-4. We know we hit for 8 in the sky, which means we get to play Earthshaker Kenra. We shut off one of their blockers. Whatever we don't shut off, we know it has to block or they take 12. So we shut off Beaumont Courier's ability to block. They're forced to block with Sigrid and give us our Scorch Spitter back. So just a fantastic turn there because we had that treasure. And Sarkhan's even safe because we have a dragon here. So again, they can't attack until they kill our dragon or our Sarkhan. And honestly, they probably don't want to. I mean, they're at 3 life, so just hold that as a blocker. Looks like they don't have anything to get them out of that one, and that will pivot us into 1-1. Just grabbing a nice sip in between rounds, as usual. Got some water with a fruit punch mix in it today. Delicious. All right. Round 3 off the 1-1 start. Another pretty great hand. I just like red cards. I just like mono red. I like aggro. I feel like that might hinder my ability to read how good these hands are, but I know none of them are mulligans so far for sure. But yeah, all these hands look fantastic to me. They might not be fantastic, but they're all good enough to not mulligan. I hold all these cards dearly. I love them all. Start off with Grim Initiate here. We get to curve into that Earthshaker Kenra and light up the stage somewhere in between those and Sarkhan to draw some cards. So we are playing against a Rakdos deck. The Magmatic Channeler coming out this turn. Earthshaker Kenra's ability is really nice here, so we can still get in for the attack, even though they have the blocker. Chip in for 3 damage that way. Now that we've drawn in an axe, we're probably just playing that next turn. Ooh, weaponize the monsters and get to Grim Lavamancer here. So definitely the Rakdos Sacrifice deck, and Grim Lavamancer great in any red deck as well. Gives you some damage that you get to use by all of the cards in your grave from throughout the game. So yeah, I'm just going to drop an axe here. The one thing that's a little bit worrisome about dropping an axe is if they do have like the active treason effect, an axe is going to be pretty good for them. Steal it, sacrifice it, get a satyr, sacrifice the satyr. But we haven't seen one yet. They're down to 3 cards in hand here. But it is something we could expect in this matchup. I don't think that it's worth playing around enough to the point where I just want to play light up the stage without any mana to cast anything. Now we have Lightning Bolt here. That's actually really nice. We can kill that Magmatic Channeler before it can do anything, and they're down to just a Lavamancer. Lavamancer trades for Kenra, but we're pretty fine with that trade. That also makes it so we get to attack in with everybody. We definitely get some damage in. We can cast Light Up the Stage as well. I like that play a lot. I'm going to go for the Lightning Bolt on Magmatic Channeler. They have 2 mana up here, so they could sacrifice it to the weaponize the monsters, throw 2 damage at something. But they're only going to kill something that was already going to die, pretty much. Although I guess this way, they don't have to block and trade to kill the Kenra. But we still get the tokens from an axe. Yeah, still definitely the right play because we get that out of the way for this attack here, which is great. And now we cast Light Up the Stage, see what we hit. A Mountain and a Lava Runner. Might as well play both of those. We got nothing else to cast here. Ooh, and we have enough instants and sorceries in the grave for Lava Runner to have haste here, thanks to having Lightning Bolt and Light Up the Stage. Forgot how easy it is to trigger the Lava Runner. The Magmatic Channeler costs a little bit more work, needs 4 of them instead of 2. Claim the Firstborn, steal the Anax. Pretty pretty expected here. They were definitely going to steal it at some point. It is unfortunate, though, that they have enough red devotion to get 2 satyr tokens out of the sacrifice. That is really going to fuel the weaponize the monsters. But luckily those satyr tokens can't block, but they can still be used to throw damage at our stuff. So they can try to stabilize off that, but I mean, we've got enough cards in hand here that I think we can still compete in terms of the cards we're playing around with. And now I get to drop Sarkin, play a 4/4 dragon. They can kill the dragon by sacrificing some stuff with weaponize the monsters so that they can kill Sarkin, but they can also just sacrifice the stuff to kill Sarkin. So I think either way around, Sarkin's not long for this world, but it's still good to get just the 4/4 flyer out. Grim Initiate has a safe attack here, but they have the 2 cards engraved for the Grim Lavamancer. So they're likely just going to use Grim Lavamancer's effect to kill the Initiate. Go for the Grim Initiate here. Not really going to block with it. Again, if they want to kill Sarkin, there's no amount of blocking we can do to save him, because they can just sacrifice 1 thing to weaponize. If we use the -3 effect, Sarkin will be down to 2. Alright, they are going to go ahead and kill the Grim Initiate here. Nothing I can do about that, but we do get a token out of it at least. And now, I should have attacked with the Satyr as well, since the Satyr can't block anyway. If we just trade with Dreadwanderer, that's not the end of the world. Sure, they can bring it back, but it costs them extra mana to do so, which makes it so they have less mana to use weaponize. So, not the optimal play there. I think we're supposed to send in the Satyr token as well. Let's get our Sarkin out, get our Dragon out. They can kill both of these things, but it'll cost 6 mana to do so. So one of these things is going to survive this turn. And Emberstorm Predator's the play, so it looks like both of them are surviving this turn. So super happy with that. The only thing I'm not happy about is this card is terrifying. They can sacrifice a creature to give it indestructible till end of turn and tap it. Every time it becomes tapped, they exile a card from our graveyard and put a +1/+1 counter on it, so this just gets bigger and bigger. It's indestructible the whole time. Do we have lethal? No, we don't have lethal here, but we can make Sarkin a flyer, shut off Emberstorm's ability to block, and hit for 8, which is pretty good. It's pretty good, but it's not lethal. It puts them to 3, and then Viashino Pyromancer would put them to 2. We can do a lot of work here, so I think we do that. I think we just get in for as much as we can. The only way that they can make this big enough to not get targeted by Earthshaker Kenner's ability is by tapping it, and if it's tapped, it can't block either, so no matter what, that can't block there. Now we know we're getting in for 8 damage in the sky. They only have 3 blockers, so we get in for 1 on the ground, right? Well, they only have 2 blockers, right? So they block there, take 1. They're actually at exact lethal. They go to 2 life, and we can Young Pyromancer them next turn. We just have to survive this next turn. And they have to make... Well, they don't have to block 2 things, but they do have to block 1 thing. We hope that they block as much as they can here, because I think the only way we lose this game is if they can find a way to just kill us next turn, which it's possible with an Emberstorm Predator out, because that's going to get really big. But yeah, they have to gain some life, or they have to kill us in their next turn. Because they're at 2, and we have 2 damage in hand thanks to Viashino Pyromancer. So let's see, we're at 16. They have 6 damage on board, 4 from Predator, 2 from the Satyrs. Predator does turn into a 5/5, so that's 7 right there, puts us to 9. They have to find a way to do 9 more damage. God Eternal Bond 2 is not that. Just lets them sacrifice those Satyr tokens to draw some cards, try to find some answers to the situation. And unfortunately, it looks like we have got them dead to rights, just on board. Don't even need the Pyromancer in hand here. They are tapped out. But they're going to send the message, go ahead and kill that Sarkin while they still can. I can definitely respect that. But we'll just go for the all-attack next turn. Because that is dead on board then. Just clear things out the simple way here. Alright, so that is 2-1 now for our return to the Arena Cube drafts. The return to my My absolute propensity for drafting mono red. My affinity for mono red. Excuse me. Grab a drink here between rounds as usual. Round 4. 2-1 now. We've got a Shock, Lannery Storm, Glorybringer. This is probably my least favorite hand so far just because the curve isn't great. Shock isn't a card we're actually playing turn 1 because it just messes with our opponent's creatures. So we're not doing anything until turn 3, and then, I mean, being able to cast Glorybringer turn 4 thanks to Lannery's effect is pretty good, so it's definitely not worth a mulligan. It's just not the perfect hand because we're not doing anything turn 1 or turn 2. If I play this Kazul's Fury, then I know I get to Glorybringer turn 5, but I can also wait till next turn to do it, because I also don't have a 2-mana card in this hand. Well, it looks like Shock gets to do something. I'll get that Isamaru out of the way. We do like clearing the 2-2 off the board so that our 2-2 might be able to live and use its ability later. So let's cast this Crash Through and see if we draw another land. If we don't draw another land, now I'll play that Kazul's Cliffs as a land, so I know I have 4 mana by turn 4 for Glorybringer, even if I don't draw another land, because Lannery gives us 1 treasure token. Next turn we play our 4th untapped land and use the treasure token, cast the Glorybringer. So looks like another monocolor deck here, mono white. I like the aggressive mirror match here, although it is possible, not incredibly likely, but it is possible to play a more controlling or mid-range mono-white deck. I have drafted mono-white control once, although that was not in a video, unfortunately. So we're going to just drop this Glorybringer out, just go for gold here, see if we can't get a nice Exert trigger on the Glorybringer to kill that Remorseful Cleric and just slam in. So even if they have the removal to kill Glorybringer next turn, we still got a removal spell out of it, and there's the concession from our opponent. Just too impressive of a start from us, just Lannery into Glorybringer. So while it was my least favorite hand thus far, you don't have to have a super consistent curve when you've got the 1-2 punch of Lannery into Glorybringer. Probably that 2-card combo was immediately just as impressive as any other hand I'd drawn so far. So I probably wasn't giving that enough credit. Well, that was a really fast game. As we move on to the next round, that puts us to 3-1, heading into round 5. Pretty great start here. I think you need 5 wins in your runs in this event to get the amount of gold you paid in back, and just get all those rare cards for free. Okay. Not a wonderful curve here, but some pretty powerful cards. Dragonkin Berserker, Pyromancer, Tyrant. We've got 3 mana, we're only 1 away from Tyrant coming out later. Not worth a mulligan in my humble opinion. And a very good draw, giving us something to play on turn 1, so it gives us a bit of a curve. Now we 1-drop into a couple 2-drops over the next 2 turns. Pretty fine with that. Our opponent does start with a forest into an island, so green and blue. Simic so far. Paradise Druid, so alright, here we go. Opponent is going to be ramping here. I'm going to offer every trade possible to kill this Paradise Druid to keep them off of their larger plays throughout this game, so we're just going to slam the Scorch Spitter in. Paradise Druid does have hexproof as long as it's untapped, so we can't even just choose to Banefire it here if we really wanted to. If I could, I don't really think I would anyway. Yeah, I'm just going to drop the Pyromancer here, keep as much damage going onto my opponent as possible. Dragonkin Berserker, having First Strike means it attacks into the Druid a little better, because the Druid can't block and trade with it, but Druid's already a card they're not likely to want to trade, and I want to get that thing off the board, and it's more likely they actually try to make a trade with it if I play something that doesn't just First Strike it away. So now I've drawn Lightning Bolt. I think we're going to just kill that Rashmi. This is the kind of card that's going to give them an immense amount of value throughout the game. Every turn they're drawing at least 1 card off of this if they're casting a card every turn, so And that's at worst case scenario. They draw it. At best case scenario, they just cast it for free. So not the kind of card we can leave on the board here. Just too impressive of an effect. And now, do I want to just play the 2-1? I think now it's worth just playing the Dragonkin Berserker. Sure, it puts it on the board for more time for if they do have removal. Now they're just going to kill that over anything else. But I think it's enough better than the 2-1 that does nothing. That it's still worth it, even if it does put it in a little bit of danger, so we're probably not bossing into a dragon. We're also only on 3 mana, so it's going to be quite a while before we'd be bossing into a dragon token anyway. Although that is 1 cheaper per dragon I control, so if I get a Leyline Tyrant out, that'll only cost 4 mana to do, which is really good. Scavenging Ooze from our opponent can definitely help them try to stabilize. They gain life every time they exile a creature from a grave. There is 1. There's Rashmi. Although they spent double green on that, so they don't have... Actually, they do. They have Paradise Druid up. So if we attack in here, they can block with that as a 3/3 and gain a life. So I don't think we attack in. I could Banefire it for 3, because they can only give it +1/+1. There's only 1 creature in graves. If I want to just get that off the board immediately. But I can also just drop a big old flyer. And if this resolves and survives, I can also boast out a dragon next turn, which is also very good. It's about the only time I know I get to kill that Scavenging Ooze, though, because there could be more and more creatures in the grave as the game progresses. Pretty good argument either way between Tyrant and Banefire. I'm going to roll with the Tyrant here. This might be a little bit cheeky. It might be me kind of diving in a little too deep on the cute tribal synergy of Dragonkin Berserker with the dragon out, but... that's just where I'm at here. That's what I'm going to try out. This allows me to next turn just slam the all attack button and make another dragon token. Because, like, sure, whatever blocks they make, they get to kill the Dragonkin Berserker, but that's going to come in no matter what. And then anything else they block, it's going to be a trade. And I'll have a 4/4 flyer and a 5/5 flyer. Ooh, I was going to be really happy if they sent that Scavenging Ooze in. Because that would mean that Dragonkin Berserker gets to get in freely. Well, now we have a Lannery Storm. Does that change anything? I don't think so, and I think we even let them keep the Kiora. Sure, they can draw cards, sure, they can untap stuff, but we're going to do a bunch of damage to them and get 9 power flyers onto this board, as well as having a Banefire in hand to chip away for the last bit of damage. I think we are on the all-attack button plan here, thanks to Dragonkin Berserker's ability, allowing us to spit out a dragon because we have a Leyline Tyrant on this board. But yeah, that is a very clear block for them. That is definitely the block there. Paradise Druid can kind of block wherever it wants, unless they have, like, dive down. But I guess even there, yeah, can block wherever it wants and survive. What is happening? Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I had no idea what that audio was. Turns out I had a tab open that just started playing an ad, so my bad there. Ooh, this is one way they could really try to stabilize. Baral's Expertise bounce all of my creatures, including my token, so my token's permanently gone. Now they have a Thassa out as well because they got to cast Thassa for free. Ow, what a painful turn for us. Now we get to cast Captain Lannery. I guess our best play here is probably to cast... If we want to cast 2 things, we can cast Pyromancer and Magmatic Channeler, or we can cast Lannery and Pyromancer. Kind of more into the Lannery Pyromancer thing, because then we kill the Paradise Druid, that's their only blocker, or we do 2 to them, and if we do 2 to them, they're going to die to a Banefire. Yeah, I'm going to go for the Lannery. Attack them. They do have 1 mana up here. Am I running into a 1 mana card? Actually, no, they don't. Paradise Druid is summoning sick. For some reason. Did they bounce that? It looks like it's summoning sick. It's got the gray stuff. Alright, yeah, we make the trade. That's about what I expected, because if we didn't, I could hit them for 3 and then definitely just Banefire them next turn. But here I still get to do that, make that attack, and get the Pyromancer out to deal 2 damage here, put them down to 4. And if we draw a land, we just Banefire them to the face, if they didn't gain any life. If we don't draw land, we probably just play like the Leyline Tyrant again. I guess Scavenging Ooze is active here, gaining more life thanks to the more creatures engraved, which is an issue. But I can't attack with it particularly aggressively because I'm playing a red deck. If I play any hasters, I can really bash in. And they're at 7. Alright, yeah, so they don't go for the attack there. So we did hit the mana for the Banefire if they hadn't gained life, but of course, you know, Scavenging Ooze is going to hinder that plan a lot. We do have 5 mana. What do I want to do here? We know we get to do 4 damage with Banefire. So I only have to do like 3 to them. I kind of just like playing Leyline Tyrant. If Leyline Tyrant hits them once, they're dead. So they have to hold up the mana to use Thassa's secondary ability to just keep tapping that. And again, I think at this position, they do get to gain a couple more life still, but I think they're very unlikely to get aggressive super quickly here. Leyline Tyrant's ability is also really nice, being able to bank the red mana, just hold on to it throughout our steps and phases. Means we can get even closer to Banefiring them for lethal. So Teferi comes out, draws a card, discards a card. They're going to have to phase out the Leyline Tyrant next turn, which I guess gets rid of the effect, so we don't get to hold on to the red mana anymore, unfortunately. I would be surprised, but very happy if they attack here, because that makes it more likely I can get that Banefire off. Yeah, we'll just take 7, go to 10. Pyromancer gets to get in now. They just phase out the Teferi. We hit with Pyromancer for sure, but they're going to phase out Leyline Tyrant, unfortunately. Okay, let's get that red mana while we can. Insult here is pretty great. Insult doubles our damage for the turn, so if we cast Insult right now, Pyromancer hits for 4 and Banefire hits for 4. That's not lethal. If I go for a Banefire... right now, Banefire hits for 5. Puts them to 4 life, that's also not lethal. Either way I do it, it's not lethal here. Because Teferi gets to phase out one of my creatures. Do I have the mana to Insult and Injury? I do. I have the mana to cast Insult and Injury. So I can do that instead of Insult Banefire so that I can hold on to Banefire for next turn and I can still do a bunch of damage. But then I just die to Scavenging Ooze. I have to have a blocker for Scavenging Ooze. I think we just play it really safe. Because we have Insult and Banefire now, so we're like so close to just blasting them next turn. Oh my god, they didn't phase out here? Oh, I guess they can wait till it attacks them. And then now they phase it out. Yeah, I like using... The reason I played Magmatic Channeler pre-combat is so that I used my red mana before Leyline Tyrant gets phased out, because then if it gets phased out, my mana just goes away forever, I think. In case I wanted to spend all of this mana here as well. Although I don't think I do. I guess I could just Banefire Teferi. Yeah, Banefire Teferi is definitely an option. Although Banefiring Teferi means I don't get to Banefire their face, and they have a Scavenging Ooze. Do they have any creatures in graves? There's no creatures in any graves, so it might be worth it. I'm going to just shoot Teferi here. I don't know if this is right, but Teferi's annoying. We'll just deal with that. That also gets their blue devotion down enough to where Thos is probably not ever blocking. Verdurous Gearhulk, throw a bunch of counters on Scavenging Ooze. Luckily, since it doesn't have Trample, I think we're doing fine. I guess they get to throw a bunch of counters on the Gearhulk as well, but Tyrant does get to get in there since they tapped out. Don't have enough mana to tap with Thassa. So we know we hit for 4 in the sky. With Insult, that'll make it lethal. Hit for 8 in the sky. Yeah, Banefiring the Teferi I think is right, because we have the Insult as another way to just try to cheese out a victory. Add just a ton more damage here. Make the chump block there. I guess we could go to 1, but that's a little scary to me. A little extra spooky. Let's do double damage and hit for 8. And there's the concession from our opponent there, leading us into 4 wins and 1 loss so far. Really great showing from the Mono Red deck. That was a complicated game, pretty complicated board state from our opponent. I think there's a lot of plays we could have done differently there. That might have been better, like if we had more aggressively just shot down the Scavenging Ooze immediately. It became an 8/8 and gained them a bunch of life, so maybe Bane firing that Scavenging Ooze on that one turn that I was considering it a long time ago would have been right. I think in hindsight it probably would have. Yeah, a lot of stuff we could have done there in that game. Very, very, very interesting game, definitely to look back on. Heading into the next round here. And I like the hand. Grim Initiate into Emberth Shieldbreaker. If we don't draw any more lands, we've got that going on at least. If we do, get that Mecha Godzilla out, and eventually, Glorybringer is always very powerful, as we've seen. I think today's video's artwork is definitely going to be the Lightning Bolt. It's such beautiful artwork. And also just a pretty powerful, iconic card. Really cool to see it added to the cube this time around. Dread Wanderer will start things off from our opponent. Pretty happy to have a Grim Initiate against that. 1/1 First Striker really shuts off the attacks from the 2/1. Even if they use a removal spell on the Grim Initiate, we do a mass 1 and get a 1/1 zombie army. And trading a 1/1 zombie army token into the Dread Wanderer seems fine to me. This will come back from the grave eventually, but just holding them off for quite a while seems fine when they're on the play with an aggressive start. So, Grim Initiate will be hitting the board here. Our next draw is a little awkward, drawing the other 5-mana card in our deck, the Sarkhan. Not ideal when we only have the 2 lands, but it will be a powerful card eventually. Blue and black, and they drop Haka, Whispering Raven. Could definitely see an argument for just sniping that out of the sky with a lightning bolt. I mean, it hits us for 2, and then they just scry 2. We're not going to attack if that thing's around. Ember's Shieldbreaker would be our play for this turn. It would just be a 2/1. It's not a very exciting play if we don't cast a lightning bolt this turn. Yeah, I'm kind of fine with that. Sure, this is just going to go back into their hand, so it's not like the 2/3 flyers staying around forever, but by killing the 2/3 flyer, that's not going to go back into their hand and become this Allrind that draws them a bunch of cards every turn. It's just gone forever. So I kind of like just dealing with it right there and not worrying about it in the future. This also lets me hold on to the Ember's Shieldbreaker in case they play any artifacts for later for the battle display there. But turn 3, pretty easily just going to be a Mecha Godzilla here. We'll see what happens. I wouldn't be surprised to see a counterspell, but it's not going to stop me from playing my card for turn, seeing what happens. Mecha Godzilla, the kind of card you always want to play pre-combat to see if it gets any good abilities. Just get that extra value there. We do get a lifelink counter on it. Not bad at all. Of course, the best ability to possibly get on the Mecha Godzilla is just to immediately get hexproof. That's always fantastic, because then it becomes really hard to deal with. Sword of Body in mind, but no creatures to equip it onto. This card is very threatening. If you hit your opponent once, you mill 10 cards from their library, which is massive in a limited format like this. So I think this is where our Emberth Shieldbreaker is really going to shine. Sure, most of the time it's a little... it's a decent bit below curve. Just a 1-mana 2/1 is nothing exciting, but it's playable enough. You just play a 2/1 and attack with it in an aggressive deck, and it's not the end of the world. And in the times where you are blowing up an artifact with it, you're getting something really good in cube, like a Sword of Body in mind. That being said, our opponent wasn't even going to play a creature this turn, so it's not likely the sword would do anything for a while, but it still always feels good to get that kind of stuff going. Do we want to kill Tezzeret here just to not deal with his nonsense? Tezzeret just spits out 1/1s to block with, draws some cards. We have Lightning Strike to do 3 damage to something. I don't want to attack with Emberth Shieldbreaker. I think that's the only thing for sure this turn. We get to play Magmatic Channeler and Lightning Strike. Mecha Godzilla's got Reach now. Yeah, let's just do that. If Mecha Godzilla gets through, we'll just kill Tezzeret. If they chump block, that's fine. If Tezzeret makes it to 9, that is a pretty impressive ultimate, but the second ability is just draw a card, not that bad. Not the scariest thing to deal with. Alright, our opponent has 6 mana now. They could play a Liliana now. Get a bunch of planeswalkers going on, and then be threatening. Alright, we go to our turn now. We're not going to Lightning Strike during their end step. We draw into a Banefire. 1 card engrave. We need 4 for Magmatic Channeler to be really big. It's not doing much here. I don't think we want to discard Sarkhan to draw. I mean, maybe we do. I don't want to discard Glorybringer to draw, that's for sure. But, yeah, I could actually see just discard the Sarkhan and see what we hit. I'm just going to go for it and do it pre-combat so that I know what kind of burn spells I might have access to here. Light up the stage. I kind of would rather have the Mountain. Question is, do I try to play Glorybringer, though? Because if they have the counterspell, I'm sad. But if they don't, Glorybringer's so good here. I'll just play a Glorybringer. No idea what they're holding on to. They've got 1,000,000 mana, so probably something instant speed to interact with our stuff. Sublime Epiphany would be disgusting. That card's always disgusting and limited. That looks like the case here. Yep, Sublime Epiphany it is. Actually, not the best Sublime Epiphany I've ever seen, for sure. The only thing they got to do was copy a 1/1 there. But they still got to counter the Glorybringer and bounce the Mechagodzilla. Cruel Reality. We have to sacrifice a creature every turn.
A master builds with ease.
Yeah, so we just sacrifice like a Grim Initiate and then sacrifice the token from it. It's not that bad for us right now. I think we're doing fine. But that will add up pretty quickly. And Tezzeret's almost at the ultimate, so we have to kill Tezzeret here. Can't kill Tezzeret, but we can Lightning Strike Tezzeret to keep him from the ultimate. They need 9 for the ultimate, so they're not there yet still. So I don't think we do anything about it yet. I don't really want to discard any of these to draw off Magmatic Channeler. So I think I'm just going to attack Tezzeret with the Channeler. If they triple block, we'll have to Lightning Strike one of them to save the Magmatic Channeler. But then we get to kill 2 of them, so not bad at all. Start clearing these things out of the way. Definitely starting to get really worried this game. Our opponent is getting to that point where they stabilize. We're out of cards, but they're the blue-black deck, so they've got several ways to 2-for-1 us, draw more cards, all that kind of stuff. So it's turning into a really bad position for us very quickly here, and I don't know if there's any way to get out of it, especially now that they've played Shadow Spear. Coom Hellhound's the draw. Yeah, I just don't think there's a way we're going to get here now. Because we have to hit Tezzeret again. I mean, we can Banefire the Nightmare Shepherd to do so. Banefire the Nightmare Shepherd, we have to attack Tezzeret with everybody. We lose the Shield Breaker, but they lose both of those. Or they lose one of them. I guess they know Tezzeret's going to hit, so Tezzeret's not going to ult anyway, so they might not do that. Yeah. Shoot that Nightmare Shepherd. Even just on a 1/1 Thopter, the Shadow Spear is very bad for us. Unfortunately. It's not going to be a great attack here. Because we, in order to stop Tezzeret from ultimating, we lose our Embereth Shieldbreaker. And then Cruel Reality is going to hit us again. And we're going to have to sacrifice Magmatic Channeler or Mechagodzilla. Either of which would be not great. But I don't really think we have another line. Because the only way we kill Tezzeret is if we attack with everybody. Or keep Tezzeret from the ultimate is if we attack with everybody.
You'll regret this.
The choice between Magmatic Channeler and Mechagodzilla is incredibly difficult, because Magmatic Channeler helps us not draw so blindly off the top, but Mechagodzilla is like such a better attacker. I mean, Mechagodzilla just keeps trying to hit Tezzeret and getting blocked by Thopters. Tezzeret's going to ultimate if we just keep smacking with Mechagodzilla. So do we actually just... I guess we could use Magmatic Channeler before we choose. See what we get here. Because the Koom Hellhound's not going to do anything. Kazul's Fury is actually not good here. Sacrifice something to do 4 damage. Not going to be enough to kill Tezzeret. Yeah, no, this is... not great. Yeah, I mean, as I said before, just trying to hit Tezzeret with Mechagodzilla over and over is not going to work unless Mechagodzilla gets trample basically immediately. I guess we're just all in on that. Let's get trample Mechagodzilla. Just go for the real luck play, because there's not much else we're going to get through this game. Oh my god, and we draw into Crash Through to give Mechagodzilla trample this turn. That holds Tezzeret off for 1 more turn. And we draw a Nax, which fuels us against a Cruel Reality. Sacrifice a Nax, and then we sacrifice a 1/1 Satyr, and then we sacrifice a 1/1 Satyr. I guess an Nax only has 2 power, so we only sacrifice 1/1 Satyr. But, yeah, pretty great draws there. Again, we're going to have to keep top decking like absolute champions to stay in this game, but we're in it for now.
The stakes are clear.
Just cards like Tezzeret and this enchantment here, just any planeswalker, plus like enchantments with upkeep abilities, just giving them incremental advantage throughout this whole game. These things stack up real quickly. And just the fact that we've stayed around this long is actually pretty decent. Those were some great draws lately, but this is definitely not a game that's looking up for us. And now they even have the Lithoform engine to start copying whatever they want. They can even copy permanent spells that they cast, so that they get more copies of whatever the next bomb they draw into is. But for now, I mean, they double Tezzeret's ability. Tezzeret gets more loyalty. Stuff like that.
We'll keep an eye on you.
Or they just double Cruel Reality's effect and I lose Annex and the Satyr right now. It's actually not that bad. I'd actually be more scared if they doubled Tezzeret's effect, I think. Although with Mechagodzilla trampling over, it's not that scary. Ooh, Leyline Tyrant. Actually could be a real deal here. Definitely hitting Tezzeret again. Kind of the only hope. Ooh, we do get flying. So they can only block with the Thopter. They don't block with the Thopter, so Tezzeret goes down to 4. Now we get to play a Leyline Tyrant. Dump a bunch of red mana into that, and then dump a bunch of red mana into it again, then sacrifice it next turn. Shoot Tezzeret and kill it. At least get that out of here. Or potentially just shoot their face for a bunch.
What must be done?
Either way, Tezzeret's now just drawn them 2 more cards. They've got... Actually, they have Lithoform Cruel Reality, so Mechagodzilla and Leyline Tyrant are going to die here. And they're going to die before we know what we're drawing into, so we have to decide how we're going to spend the Leyline Tyrant mana right now. I think not knowing what we draw next, we kind of need to have the mana up to be able to put something on this board. Although if it's just one creature, we're going to die to this Cruel Reality. So do we just dump a bunch of mana in this and just shoot their face and hope for a Banefire? If we cast, we've already lost our Banefire. Yeah, no, we're not going to win out of a Banefire this game. So what? We have Torbrand, Skewer the Critics, Insult to Injury, Royal Eruption. Can hit for 3 plus 6. We can hit their face for 9. That puts them down to 8. We'd have to draw a lot of burn to kill them after that. And they have Shadow Spear. No, they have Shadow Spear. There's no way we go for the burn. So we'll sacrifice Leyline Tyrant and just kill Tezzeret here so that we can have the mana to do whatever we draw next, maybe. Tezzeret's at 4, right? Yeah. Okay, get rid of that full control. Into the Royal to save the Tezzeret. Go back to the hand, draw a card, recast it next turn. Seems good. Yeah, no, we're scooping it up here. We can't put anything on the board unless we put more than 2 creatures out. And they're going to draw 4 cards a turn if they want. 2 cards a turn if they just use the 0. 4 if they use the 0 and double it. That's definitely a line they could take here, because they don't have to double the thing that makes us sacrifice stuff if we don't put 2 creatures out. No, definitely got hard locked out of that game by the Dimir control deck there. Definitely a game where perhaps things could have gone differently if we look back on that, but the deciding turns weren't near the end of the game there. They were definitely near the start of the game. If there were ways we could have been more aggressive to maybe take out the Tezzeret, or if we completely ignored the Tezzeret, if we could have gone aggressive enough to kill them before they play stuff, maybe even not blowing up the sword, just holding onto that shield breaker so we could blow up the lifelinking artifact may have won us the game. But I don't know if that means that blowing up the sword was a mistake without the information that we had by the end of the game, because I mean, sword is still a mythic rare powerhouse equipment, but definitely one of those things that might just be a hindsight mistake for sure. But as always, in a game of Magic, especially in these cube drafts, plenty of different ways that can have gone if we look back on things, and maybe some things to learn to gather there. Yeah, we'll keep this. It's fine. Grim Initiate into Earthshaker Kenra. That's a way to start out a game. Our opponent starts with Field of the Dead, and they have Yorion in the companion slot. I love our opponent's deck already. I am all for it. So Field of the Dead means they're going to have tons of lands with different names. That could mean several different colors, so they have one of each basic land, maybe a 5-color deck, or it could just mean a bunch of non-basic lands. And Yorion means they're playing a 60-card deck in Limited, so they're playing almost everything that they drafted. Or at least a lot more cards than most of us, so this will be a pretty cool deck to see, although, yeah. Although it might not work out well for us. We'll see how well their deck works out here. But definitely a potentially pretty scary deck here. Although if they don't play any blockers, if they just play some kind of draw spell or a mana rock next turn, then it's going to be really hard for them to win, because if we get to play this Torbran while they have no blockers out, it's very likely to close out this game. They do have the 1 blocker out. It's not the worst thing they could have done against us, but it's far from the best. I think Torbran is just a great play here then. They trade with something and we hit for a bunch. And we have the Banefire and Sarkhan coming up. It's looking like a pretty great start for us. Ooh, and they choose to trade with Earthshaker Kenra, so if we do hit 6 mana, we do get to eternalize this as a 4/4 haste and shut off a blocker that turn, so that's great. They're down to 8 already. They are looking to be 5 colors. No white mana from them, but everything else. They do have the board wipe here, but we still have the 1/1 out thanks to the Grim Initiate's ability, and now we just get to put a 4/4 flyer out. So, thanks to our resilient threats like the Earthshaker Kenra and Grim Initiate, we've still got gas here. So it's going to take multiple board wipes to get out of this one. Thragtusk, a huge help though. Huge assistant there, gaining them a ton of life. But with only 1 black mana up, Banefire in hand should just be lethal here. Earthshaker Kenra only has 4 power, so it can't stop a 5-power creature from blocking. So Earthshaker Kenra is not lethal, but Banefire certainly is, and we can spend the 5 to play around a Pact of Negation as well. Alright, yeah, the Torbran curve was too much for our opponent, but definitely a really cool deck from them. I actually feel a little bit bad about just dunking on them with the mono red there. They certainly had the deck that I would say is definitely more difficult to draft correctly, and they had a pretty good hand. I mean, Solemn Simulacrum to fix that mana. When it dies, they draw a card, and then they had the Wrath effect even, the finality there. So they had the well-built deck to try to stop even the aggressive decks like Mono Red there. Just didn't pan out because our hand was too good. So that does put us to 5 wins no matter what. We get 4,000 gold and 3 random uncommon to rare rewards out of this. So that is absolutely lovely. Definitely where you like to be in these Arena Cube drafts if you're in the best of 1 queues like I am. Because it does cost 4,000 to play. So, at 5 wins here, 5 and 2, no matter what happens from this point on, we've gotten everything that we spent into this back out of it. So, just a wonderful place to be. And we'll see how things go in round 8. Faithless Looting, turn 1 from our opponent. Draw 2, discard 2. Okay, looks to be a Boros deck from our opponent, discarding a Plains and a Pillar of Flame. So I would expect somewhat of a mirror match here. I'd expect some pretty aggressive stuff. On average, out of the red and white decks in the format, that is where red-white overlap the most, would definitely be an aggression. Thalia's not great for us. Being a 2/1 first striker is a really big deal. And even the taxing, making our non-creature spells cost 1 more, is annoying, but definitely not as annoying for us as it would be for a lot of other decks. Luckily, our mana draw is pretty good here. We get to make it to 4 mana no matter what, and if we need the 5th mana for Sarkhan, we do get to play the Kazul's Cliffs here. It is possible we'll need 6, but I'm hoping to kill Thalia before then. I'll take a trade with Lannery. When it comes to Thalia, we could trade 1 card for Thalia, which is probably even better. I guess we have to consider, is Thalia affecting them pretty poorly as well, or is it just affecting us badly here? I mean, it doesn't affect us until we have to play Sarkhan, so actually might be better to just kill Lannery. Either way, we trade 1 of our cards for 1 of theirs. So I'm really tempted to just kill Thalia and get it out of the way, but Lannery here, stopping them from getting all those treasure tokens seems pretty good. Yeah. We are really hoping to draw into something here, though, because we are going to be not casting anything next turn. Ooh. Insult is a sad draw here, because we need the 4 mana to play it. So again, we're not casting anything here. Do we play the Cliffs so we can just get the tapped land out of the way? Yeah, this doesn't feel like it's going to be a Kazul's Fury game. So we'll just get our tapped mana out now so that we don't have to play a tapped land later if we do need to make it to 6 mana. Alright, so we get hit with Thalia. They are winning the race here. They do have a 2 power creature. We have a 1 power creature, but Leyline Tyrant coming out next turn is going to be really nice. Captivating Crew is very threatening. For 4 mana, they get to gain control of one of our creatures till end of turn and just smack us with it. So, in just an aggressive mirror match like this, Captivating Crew is pretty devastating, because now next turn they don't even need to play a creature. If we play Leyline Tyrant, they could just take it and smack us with it, and they just hit us for 10. We go to 6 life. Pretty much can't win after that. So is there any play that we have that can play around the Captivating Crew any better? I really don't think there is. I mean, we can play a Nax, and then they can steal an Axe and slap us with that instead, but that hits us for 3. It's almost as bad as getting hit by Leyline Tyrant. I think we just play the Leyline Tyrant here, but we might just be getting slapped by this Captivating Crew to end things here. Just need one of our burn spells to kill that. Actually, happier with them killing Tyrant than just slapping us with it, but still not particularly happy because we're in a bad spot here. Got the Akum Hellhound. A Nax plus a Hellhound does give us a lot of blockers. So I guess we get that going. 4 power is enough to trade with Captivating Crew if they don't use it to steal an X, but if they don't have any other removal, I'd expect that is the play here. Again, if we just don't have a way to kill Captivating Crew, I think this is just the kind of card that takes over these matchups. We're just fingers crossed here. Insult to Injury would kill it if we can cast both halves of this in one turn, but we can't with Thalia on board. It's looking like the run ends here. What's our best block? 6, 7, 8, 9. I guess we don't immediately die if we don't block here. Could hope to draw like an absolute god. I mean, if we draw land, do we play the land for a Akoum Hellhound? We can double damage with Insult. So we hit for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. We're 1 damage off from lethal. Now, I'm just going to take this all and see if I get to send the message next turn, put them to 1 life as well. No, we just draw Mechagodzilla. Well, I mean, that's probably our best play per the turn. They have enough mana to steal 1 creature again, so if I attack with an axe and they steal 1, they're attacking us with 3 things and we only have 2 blockers, so we can't afford to attack with anything this turn. If they have a burn spell, that's just it, and we're just dead on the spot. Glorybringer works too. Mechagodzilla doesn't have reach here. So that'll close it out there, unfortunately. Just lost to a similar aggro deck with just a better start there. It doesn't matter how we block. I think the only big play we could look back on there, maybe trade for the Thalia instead of the Lannery. I think we get crushed if we kill Thalia instead, though, because with the cards that they ended up playing afterwards, if they had the treasure tokens to ramp those out even quicker, I think we would have gotten just extra killed. The biggest upside that the Thalia, or the biggest upside we would get from killing Thalia is being able to play Sarkhan earlier. I don't think Insult to Injury would have changed too much. Dumping out Insult earlier so that we could actually Injury to kill something else would be good, and we could do that more easily if Thalia was gone, but the biggest change would have been being able to play a Sarkhan and get a Dragon token, because then they can't attack us with any 1 toughness creatures. Although I guess, like, if we're in that world where we get to play the Sarkhan, the only 1 toughness creature they were attacking us with was Thalia anyway. So if we're in the world where we killed Thalia so we could cast Sarkhan, Sarkhan doesn't stop anything from attacking because they don't have a 1 toughness creature. Yeah, no, I think probably did the right thing there, killing the Lannery. I'm just trying to get more proactive about looking back on the game and seeing what we could have done better, what might have not been ideal, suboptimal. But I think the game was decent all around. Probably some minor errors that may have added up to cost us the game, but nothing very easily recognizable at first glance. Either way, definitely can't be unhappy with that run. I mean, it was an Arena Cube draft. It was a fun time. We played against some cool decks. I am sad to have killed the Field of the Dead deck before we got to see them do whatever kind of crazy combos they were going to start racking up. But of course, if we let them live any longer, they probably would have overwhelmed us with all the combos that they had capable. The Dimir deck that we lost to got absolutely crushed, but it was still cool to see the deck. They had some pretty combo-y stuff going on too, being able to double Cruel Reality's ability with the Lithoform engine. It definitely just really stabilized that game and then started absolutely running us over, just trampling us over with the value on that sacrifice effect there. And then, of course, I don't remember what the third loss was, but some really, really good games, and I had a lot of fun playing Mono Red as I tend to do, and a lot of fun casting Lightning Bolt. I highly recommend it. definitely try out some lightning bolts. Anyways, here's the rewards from the draft. Champion of Ronos, my first copy of it, but the rest are some gems and a Perilous Voyage. Not bad at all. Of course, got the 4,000 gold right back out of it, so we can hop right back into another draft. So really fun time. If you want to see more of these Arena Cube drafts, tomorrow on Sunday, and every Sunday, I do stream on Twitch my Sunday recording sessions that I used to just record. So there are weekly streams on Twitch if you're interested in that. And of course, if you're watching this on release, that means tomorrow's stream is going to be Arena Cube drafts. But I know a lot of you will stumble upon this video, months away. There will be something happening on Sunday involving Magic. But if you're quick enough, if you're watching this day one, tomorrow is more Arena Cube drafts on Twitch. And of course, the Twitch link will be in the description below. And for those of you who just enjoy the YouTube content, definitely don't worry about it. I will be dumping all of those videos onto YouTube as well, just editing them a little bit together before I plop them onto the YouTube channel. So anyways, as always, I would like to thank you all very much for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Those are all the good things that let the YouTube algorithm know that you're enjoying the content and you'd like to see more. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Magic Arena.